Let's get it. Bitcoin looks primed to hit all-time highs here in the near future. But how high can it go? We're going to take a look at how high I think it can go this cycle when we compare it to 2017 and the 2013-2014 cycles. We will also be taking a look at Cardano today, one of my favorite altcoin picks, and we will be taking a look at how high I think it can go this bull cycle, as well as how it is going to perform here in the short term. So let's jump right in. What is up, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Cabin. My name is Tom, and in today's video we are going to be talking about Bitcoin. Looks like we are heading towards all-time highs here very soon, but how high can we go in this bull run? We're going to be taking a look at that today. We will also be taking a look at Cardano and see how it's going to compare to the US dollar as well as versus Bitcoin here in the short term, and I'll be giving a price prediction long term for where I can see Cardano going this bull cycle. If you are new to the channel, please make sure to go down below and leave a like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that you get notified when I post new videos. Feel free to leave a comment as well for any ideas that you've got for future videos. And without any further ado, let's get right to it. So, Bitcoin currently coming in at $63,332. We are on a bit of a upswing today, which is awesome. For the last 3 days, we've all been in the green. One red day in there, but that is always to be expected. A lot of people will say that perhaps the RSI is pretty high, both the RSI and the stochastic RSI, which we are. We have been quite high since the beginning of October, and we are now almost 3 weeks in. However, we can remain up that high for extended periods of time. You will see when we scroll back here that back in December of 2020, we were there from December 17th all the way until January 10th. So again, about a 3 week period. We were in there again in February, from February 4th all the way up until February 21st. So that's about a 2 week period, a little more than a 2 week period. So we can stay up there for a decent length of time before needing to have the RSI correct back down a bit, which, like I've mentioned in past videos, I do foresee more corrections along the way, right? We're never going up in a completely straight line like we would all love it to be. That is just to be expected in a typical bull run. The big question that everybody is asking is, when will Bitcoin hit all-time highs? And that is a very good question. We do not know. It is usually quite tough to break through all-time highs. We fight with that resistance. But we have come through and broken multiple peaks from the last kind of 4 peak mountain here. So we have broken through the first one here, this one we got through, this one we got past now, and we were past that one as well. So the last peak to break through is the all-time high at just under $65,000. When we look at the chart here, when we zoom in on the 4 hour, we've been trending upwards in this channel since basically the start of October, or right at the end of September. We've been pumping up in this upwards sloping channel here, with the exception of a little pump out, and then we came right back down in. So if we continue in this channel and we don't break down below, then it looks like we will be able to hit all-time highs by no later than October 24th or end of October 23rd. So this is by the end of the week, potentially over the weekend. We could be getting up above all-time highs. Of course, we could pump up a little bit sooner to break through and set all-time highs a little earlier in the week, but based on these trends and the way that this is going, if we don't break down below and we stay within this channel, like I said, by the end of the week, we could definitely be seeing Bitcoin hitting all-time highs. Another one of the major questions out there, and it'll always be out there, I believe, is when will Bitcoin peak out? When will the top of this bull cycle be? And is this more like a 2013 cycle, 2014 cycle, or is it more like the 2017 cycle? Well, it's shaping up to be more like the 2013-2014 cycle by the looks of it right now. However, the 2017 cycle didn't look anything like the 2013-2014 cycle. I shouldn't say didn't look anything like it, but it was different. So who's to say that this cycle will not be different in and of itself? But since we don't have a crystal ball and we can't predict anything different than what has happened in the past, what I'm going to be doing here is taking kind of the averages of what has happened before in the previous 2 cycles and applying it to where we are right now. So there are a lot of similarities actually in between the 2013-2014 bull cycle and the current cycle that we are in now. So I've got this on a log chart here to try to fit it all in the screen a little bit easier for you guys. So back in 2013, right here, the peak was back in, we had a peak back in April, right there. April peak, we then had a very bottom in July, end of June, early July. We then had a September bottom right there before pumping all the way up. Let's go over to this cycle. So we had a peak in April. We had a low near the end of June, beginning of July. Same thing. We also had a September low, and then now we are back on the way up. So we had some very similar things happening in 2013 as we do right now. In 2017, although we didn't have necessarily the double top cycle that everyone's talking about, we did still have a September dump here before rallying all the way up to the top. We also had this retracement back in the end of June, beginning of July. So another thing that is lining up and is very similar as well. What gets interesting here is when we start measuring how far we went after that September low, because every single cycle so far has had a September dip and then a big pump. Every single one. Like there's only been 2 really. So we're comparing very little data here, but what we do have is a about 1200% pump here in roughly less than that, even 50, I think it's 56 days. Yeah, so a 1200% pump in roughly 56 days was the first cycle. Okay, so big pump, very short amount of time. Next one, looking at the 2017 cycle, we had a September low here, and we had about a 500% pump in 91 days. So less gains in a little bit longer amount of time. So when we do the math on that, from 2013 to 2017, we had 2.4 times less pumpage in 1.6-ish times the length. So when we take those 2 numbers and bring it to today, we get, just gotta double check here, my math, we get a 200-ish% pump in 148 days from the September low, which we take from back here, okay? So 200% pump, which brings us up to right around $120,000 Bitcoin in 148 days-ish. So 147, close enough. So we're going to get roughly, if this plays out, so it's diminishing returns and lengthening cycles. There's a lot of things that are pointing towards that as well. So less percentage gains over a slightly longer period of time. That is how it appears to be playing out, and I would agree with it up until this point. Until anything else changes, we've got nothing else to base it off of, right? So here is what we've got: $100,000 to $125,000 Bitcoin by February, mid-February is basically what we're looking at. Of course, this is all speculation. In the last video that I did on Bitcoin, I showed you how some numbers could line up to be a potential 250K Bitcoin. And so that is where I think a lot of people are getting these huge estimates, anywhere like ranging in the 100, 200, like anywhere from 100 to $500,000 Bitcoin is what people are saying. So I can definitely see it hitting 100,000 for sure, potentially between this 100 and 125,000. I think that is very, very possible. The most bullish case scenario, or I think why people are saying 500,000, is because, like I said, in 2013, 2014, there was a 1,200% pump. So after that September low, a 1,200% pump. So let's take a look and see what that actually gives us. So from that September low, which was right around 40,000, If we went up 1,200%, that would give us a $526,000 Bitcoin, which I don't feel comfortable saying. I don't know if it's going to get there this cycle. I highly doubt it will get there this cycle. You never, ever know, though. A $500,000 Bitcoin, I believe, puts the market cap of Bitcoin itself at roughly like 9.4 trillion or something like that. You guys can double check the math on that. But that is, it's pretty high. Pretty high. So I don't think it's going to get there this cycle. I know people are talking about 500K for potentially next cycle. This cycle, a much more realistic price prediction to me so far is, like I said, that $120,000 to $125,000 Bitcoin by mid-February, according to diminishing returns and lengthening cycles. But that's not necessarily taking into account the potential for a blow-off top that we don't know. The unpredictability of that is so substantial that it could rally up to 200 and above. But right now, I guess my least optimistic outlook for a potential height of this bull run is that $120,000 to $125,000 Bitcoin by mid-February. All right, let's take a look at Cardano ADA. So I'm going to start looking at some of my favorite altcoins in this section as well. A member in our Telegram group asked for a little bit more detail on some of my favorite altcoins. So if you are not in our Telegram group, go and check the link in the description below. Come join us there for some more crypto discussion. But here is what I am looking at with Cardano right now. So all these yellow lines are lines of support and resistance along the way. And what I'm seeing right now is a potential bull flag here forming for ADA against the US dollar. So there's this kind of pendant here. We're getting right near the end. So it looks like a breakout could potentially occur very, very soon here. Usually these would break to the upside. So how we do this is we take from the peak all the way to the bottom here. You could potentially come all the way down here. And then if we did break out relatively soon, we could be looking at a $4 ADA here by the end of November, which I would not be upset with at all. That is well on its way to my price targets for this bull cycle, which I will talk about with you right away here very soon. However, we do have Bitcoin versus Cardano, and we've got the 21 weekly EMA coming down to potentially cross below the 200-day moving average, which is not a great sign. We also were in this kind of upward sloping channel against Bitcoin. Anytime we came out near the top, we came back down, go up to the top, come back down, go up to the top. We have broken through this channel on the weekly time frame, and so it is not looking as good for Cardano versus Bitcoin at the moment, especially with this cross coming up. That doesn't mean it can't do well against the US dollar. It just means that Cardano may pump less than Bitcoin does. So shorter term, $4 Cardano by the end of November, very possible. Compared to Bitcoin, however, we might see it suffer a little bit more here as well. As far as price predictions go for Cardano, we usually look at how Cardano has done compared to Bitcoin. So the percentage of Cardano's price versus Bitcoin's price, which at the peak here was about 0.000625. All right. So when we pull out you can pull out your calculator. You can do this yourself. I already did the math previously to this. But if Bitcoin hits that $100,000 mark, we would have a $6.25 Cardano, which I think is very, very possible, very much within reason. If Bitcoin ends up hitting $125,000, like I mentioned before, then we would have a $7.80 Cardano, which also I think is very realistic. And then finally, if we hit 250K Bitcoin, which is kind of my personal top mark for Bitcoin this cycle, we would have a $15.60 Cardano. So personally, like I said, the most conservative scenario for me is Bitcoin between $100,000 and $125,000, which means we would probably see anywhere between a $6 and an $8 Cardano, which I do think is very possible this cycle, and I would be happy with that. Considering where I bought in, it would be one of my best performing, it already is one of my best performing assets this year. But as always, with all of this stuff, it is speculation at this point, right? These are just some numbers that I have seen and what I'm seeing in chart patterns based on previous cycles and whatnot, and then also based off of how high we've been compared to Bitcoin's price. That's what I'm going to be basing most of my altcoin predictions off of in this series here. So make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. I'll be coming at you every Tuesday with one of these types of videos. Let's take a look here and see how the Bitcoin Dominance is doing. So as I mentioned for a while, there is this kind of double bottom W pattern forming. We are coming up to potentially break through this resistance line here right around 47. We are fighting with it right now. We're also seeing a potential bullish cross here for Bitcoin with the orange line coming up above the blue, which could bring us back up, which means that Bitcoin will pump harder than most of the altcoins, or at least the total market cap dominance. Most of it will shift into Bitcoin or be brought into Bitcoin, while less of the altcoins see gains, which is very typical of a bull market. That is how it kind of all starts. Like I've talked about before, the money flow usually starts with Bitcoin, then it goes into Ethereum, then some high cap alts, then the mid caps, and then the low caps after that. So that is what likely was happening back here, right? In late 2020, when Bitcoin dominance was so high, most of the money was in Bitcoin, and then it slowly started feeding down into the alts. We're kind of potentially coming up for another rebound up here. To a couple of these levels are a couple ones to watch out for. Anything around 52, 53%, and then around 58 for Bitcoin dominance at least. That's percentage of Bitcoin dominance. Coming up to there, we could start to come back down again and have the money flow from Bitcoin back into Ethereum, back into high caps, back into mid caps, and on the way down. And when that happens, you will start to see the Bitcoin dominance start to fall again. So there you have it, team. There is a brief overview of Bitcoin's current price, where I potentially see it going, as well as Cardano's price prediction for this bull cycle. If you haven't done so already, head on down, give this video a thumbs up, and hit the subscribe button. Click the notification bell and select all so you get notified for when I post these new videos. And as always, thank you so much for logging in and checking out this episode from the Crypto Cabin. I will see you next time.